All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in for this week's photography thing. So, today we're going to talk about black and white photos. Um, there's a lot of things you can do, even if it's grayscale, black, white. Um, you can do auto. We're going to start in Lightroom. So, we're going to just go through the motions of different apps. And Lightroom actually has this feature where you can click here, B and W, black and white, and you can do it this way. So, there are a couple of different programs that do a lot of black and white photos. We're going to use my Josephine here. She's no longer with us, but she was a wonderful sew, and I love her very much. So we can change the exposure, right? Like this is the same thing you can do in Photoshop. You can do it in Pixelmator Pro. But I want to see the details, but I still want the photo to be black and white. So I can change the contrast, make her fur look softer, or I can make her fur look a little more, rough. I kind of want her to keep the softness. We can change the highlights, and you're going to see her chest piece either go into a shadow or not. Her chest piece is white, so we're going to keep it there. I want to get it, a nice black and white photo of her. Now, if I wanted to do the shadows, we want to keep her soft, but now we've got her mask coming through here. And let's just say I want the whites to still pop, but not to a point where it's oversaturated. Not to the point where it looks horrible. So this looks good. This actually looks really good. Now, if we do the blacks, we can darken it or we can remove it. I feel like we should do that because it makes the eyes pop. And if we look even further in, we can see more detail. But this is pretty good so far. Now, you can play with the temperatures. It does change things. So if I wanted it to be on the cooler spectrum, it's going to allow more light in. But if you do that, you can see the wrinkles on her head here. So you can do the same things in Photoshop as well as Pixelmator Pro. The tint, it's going to do the same thing as far as the levels. Honestly, I'm just going to leave it where it is because it was actually fine. But now we can see some of her, the softness coming through, but her details are still highlighted here. And this is a black and white mixer. So, we can play with the red tones. We don't really need to worry about that because we're already in black and white. Orange. If you notice, some of the colors are changing on her fur there between the grayscales. The reason being is because she was a reverse brindle. So you'll notice that as you play around. So these details are actually pretty important, but I don't really need to worry about that because this already is good. And yeah, I don't know what that was on her face. It must have been crumbs or something. You can do the same thing with yellow. You'll notice slight changes. I mean, they're very minute when you do them in black and white. We're going to change the green scale. You're going to notice that as you do this, some things will change and some don't even apply. So in this case, like I said, I'm content with it, but you can play around with those things here in Lightroom. Sharpening. So you know what? This is usually at like 50. We're going to keep sharpening at 50. Noise reduction. I told y'all 35 for me is a sweet spot. So now we see how that changed her softness to make her fur super soft, like baby fur. And I love that detail. On here, I'm going to change this to 70. Just so that way we can retain the details. And already look at how this black and white photo is coming along. It's beautiful. All right, and the contrast. I don't think we really need to change that at all because look, there's not really a change, right? We've already changed the contrast at the top here. And we can remove. I think with this lens, it wasn't even going to apply to me. Yeah, see, this lens was a Canon lens, so I don't even need to worry about it. Geometry. Honestly, I'm not worried about changing any sets on that. Okay, so color noise. Given that it's a black and white photo, you still have colors. So if I were to undo the black and white, there's still colors there. So I'm still going to keep this at 35. I'm going to put this as 70. And the smoothness is fine. So as I said, I don't need to worry about this because I used a Canon lens. And you know, that's a really pretty black and white photo, but you know what? I'm not liking the crumbs on her face, right? So, oh, maybe I should make this smaller. There we go. And it just removes all of those little things on her. You know, it's just a little trick of the lens. And now we can, oh, I forgot that you can do that. Okay, but I want to move this over here. Okay. Will it let me? Oh, okay, yeah, it will. So you see how we got rid of those, you know, little gunk thingies on her, which is fine. Now we want to get rid of this one. Ah, look at that. Pretty. All right. So now we can zoom out. And look at that little smug mug. She was a puppy when I took this photo, and I'm very happy with how it's already coming out. But you know, if you're not wanting to do something where it's softer like that, let's just say you personally like it darker, you can come back to exposure, and everything that you did is still retained, and you can make it a little darker. And I think, you know what, that looks good because we see her wrinkles. It looks beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually export this because I like the way this came out here in Lightroom. Oh, that's so cute. I actually love the way this photo came out. So we're going to go ahead and export this. And you know what I'm going to name it is export. All right. So that's Lightroom. I love the way that came out. We can close out Lightroom. We don't need it open anymore. So let's play around in Photoshop. I'm going to show you all how to do the same things and change the different settings here in Photoshop. Although I don't know what is going on with Photoshop here. I must have resized the stuff when I closed out of the app and then started in boot camp. So let's resize this. All right. So layer, new layer. Photoshop, the one thing I love more than anything is layers. So I'm going to go to new adjustment layer, black and white. Select OK. There you go. So we're not touching the original, we're just touching this. And as you can see, this is, you know, the rough one. So you're going to see noise and everything come through. And if you look closely in her eyeballs, you're going to see me in front of her face with a camera. So see, there I am right there with the camera. All right, let's go ahead and play around. So we can do a couple of things here. I think there's like a plug-in for noise on this. I don't usually play with noise in Photoshop because I take care of it in Lightroom and then I open it up in Photoshop. But here we go. Is it this one? No. Where is it? Brushes? No. Darn it. Okay, so we can change these just like we did in Lightroom. And now you can see her brindle coming through. But she was a reverse brindle. So let's keep it, like if you wanted to see the brindle, we could make her a lighter brindle, but that's not how she looked. It was dark. So it looked more like that. The yellows, we can play, see, it's a little more drastic in Photoshop. And this is why I kind of started out with Lightroom, because I overall like Lightroom for like minor edits. We can change this. And yes, when you play with colors, it does change a couple of things. So we could make her look old lady as a puppy. It's not happening. Alrighty, and then here we go. You can play with the magenta. So that's her lip right there. And I think that that actually comes through fairly well if we change that. Is it still her? Yes. But is it her proper markings? No. So I'm going to try to get as natural as I can. Oh, that looks good already. Okay. So I'm going to touch up her face real quick before we play with anything on here. Oh, it's going to be here somewhere. Healing brush. Okay. Option click. So it's just like the cloning tool. So let's just say I want to use this section here, right? Oh, it didn't do it? Oh, come on. Okay. Spacing, hardness. Oh, wow. It's not doing it at all. It's supposed to do it. All right. You know what? Edit, redo. Hold on. It's supposed to do it. It's not doing it. No. You know what? I think it might be the spot healing. So let's go back into it. Oh, that's why. Duh, Victoria. Okay. I had to go back to the original layer to do it. That's why it wasn't working right. Oh, look. We're getting some of these little details here. 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 So when you have to do it in Photoshop, I forget, you have to go back to the original layer to make any adjustments. Oh, you know what? She had acne. Poor baby. All right. There. That looks good. Now she doesn't have the gunk on her. Oh, she's still got a little bit here. Here. All right. So that's our black and white photo for her. And I know after we had to go back and undo a couple of things, I had to come back and redo some stuff. So here we go. Curves. I think this is what I was looking for, not levels. So we can actually, you know, play with a couple of things here in black and white. And for me, there's not really much to do because we're just slightly changing a couple of the curves here on the... I mean, we can make it washed out if we wanted to, but I don't want to do that. I want to keep it pretty natural. Let's see. For those that are on a Mac, you can use Command-Z to undo your adjustment. And I forget, let's see, File, Edit, to redo it. Oh yeah, it's Shift and then Command-Z. I like that there. That looks good. They're all going to come out different. I mean, it's not going to be identical. That's why I started with Lightroom, because Lightroom is actually a very easy tool to use. But you do a little bit more in Photoshop. All right, so we're just going to keep that there. But you can go to levels, as I mentioned, layer, adjustment, levels. Okay. Well, honestly, I don't really need to play with any of this, but I could. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's go back to our layers and remove this one because I don't really need to worry about the levels layer. It was curves I was looking for. And then layer, adjustment, exposure. So you know how we had the exposure where we were able to change that little dial to the left or the right? That's pretty much what this is doing, but on a different scale of exposure. As you can tell, I can do a gamma correction. Gamma corrections can make them darker. And for those who actually play with like video stuff, such as OBS or Streamlabs, gamma is something that you do when you're playing with your camera as far as like filters to change the darkness. This looks good. Oh, no. You know what? Let's go 1.15. That was good. All right. And the exposure, do I need to change it? Probably not. I mean, me personally, I like darker photos, but in black and white, you really want to bring the details out. So I feel that's appropriate right there. You know what? We'll put it at negative 0.15. That's good. I don't really need to worry about the offset because we're good. All right, so that's good on the exposure. You can still see her finer details. Let's go to layer, adjustment. I don't really think we need to change the hue or saturation or vibrance. But as you can see, we don't see anything about noise on here at all. So that's something that's missing. It's more of a plugin for noise, and I don't have that plugin. It's a suite that you can get. It's called Nix or whatever. And I don't really play around with that. Most people use that when they're editing like skin, etc. But that's why I prefer Lightroom as opposed to Photoshop when it comes to doing black and white, because there are a little more things that you can do in Lightroom versus Photoshop when it comes to certain things that you can change on the fly. But Photoshop can pretty much do the same thing, but there are plugins for Photoshop. So this is good. You know, this is actually not bad. We didn't really have to change much, but we had to go in there and with Photoshop, it's basically layers. Layers are your best friend. Now, I don't really need to worry about saving this one, but that's how you do a black and white photo. Those are the areas. You can always go to a layer adjustment. You can come here to a new adjustment, and you could go to brightness and contrast, right? Because we played around with contrast in the other one. So let's say that we wanted to make her look softer. Contrast will do that. Make her look like she has softer puppy fur. We can do brightness on that as well. So that looks good right there. And it's not too much. I mean, you know, you're just playing with little details here and there. We could go to new adjustment layer, and we could go to, let's go to vibrance. I don't think this is going to really do much for us, but let's just say we wanted to saturate something, right? Here's our vibrance. You're not really going to see much, so you know what? Let's go ahead and delete that layer. We don't need to worry about it. Vibrance is a no in black and white. We just learned that. All right. Let's go to new adjustment layer. Photo filter. This is interesting. I haven't played with this one. Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember this. You can give her a warming filter. You can change the warming. If you wanted to make it look sepia, I think they have that. That's a cooling. That actually looks good. Okay. You can change the levels of a cooling filter. I totally forgot about this. I haven't played in Photoshop in a while when it comes to the changing the filters, because not only does it do it for black and white, this changes it for color photos as well. And you can change the vibe as far as filters. And then there's actually filters that go over, this is sepia, here we go. That actually looks pretty good for JoJo. You can actually buy filters for your lenses when you're taking the photos to have the same effect. Me personally, I have a CPL lens on my camera lens because I prefer. We're not going to use filters, so we don't need it for this one. Yeah, we're going to delete it. But I use it because every now and then I'll come across like water area or glass area, and I want to be able to have it look like it's completely no glass or no water, and you're able to see the actual subject in the water or through the glass without a reflection. So CPL lens is like my favorite filter lens to carry, aside from a standard filter, which is a UV protection on my lens. That's usually what I take with me when I'm out and about. All right. Oh yeah, layer, adjustment. What was it? The other one I was going to do. Oh no, I think that was it, right? We pretty much played with all of the ones in here. But as I mentioned, there's no noise or sharpen or any of those things on here. But this is still a pretty good photo, just in black and white. But that's why I prefer to use Lightroom and then export here. So if I wanted to change all of this later, I could do that after I've already made minor adjustments in Lightroom. So we're going to go ahead and not save because, like I said, I'm very happy with the way it came out in Lightroom. But here we go. Now we're going to do this in Pixelmator Pro. So in here, basically when you come in, you're going to always notice that you have your stuff on the left-hand side. So you're going to come to this little icon right here. And then you're going to scroll down. And then you're going to see where it says black and white. You can actually select that and it will change it for you automatically. And same thing. This is one thing I like about Pixelmator Pro as opposed to Photoshop. Because like I said, with Photoshop, you have to go layer by layer by layer. Pixelmator Pro, some of it is layer by layer, but not 100%. So it's more about a smart workflow. And this is how you would do it here. So same things that you could do in Photoshop, pretty much that we saw, right? And in this case, I don't really need to change those things. We can change the tone. And then we're able to see like the whole thing overall. But honestly, I don't really feel like we need to change any of it. Look at this. We even got sepia. So we could do that. We could change the intensity. Oh my god, I cannot speak today, y'all. I'm getting tongue-tied and I'm also congested, so I'm sorry. But we can change that. But honestly, I don't want to do sepia photos right now. Although you learned in Photoshop you can do that with the filters. You learned here in Pixelmator Pro that you can do that with just coming down here to sepia. So in this one, we actually can sharpen, which is great, right? So if we look at that. We just made her nose and her eyeballs super sharp. We don't need to be that detailed on it because I still want her to retain some softness, because if not, her face looks really hard. So let's go back down to, yeah. I think we can even, where is it? Oh, I totally forgot about this. In here, you can actually change the black and white filters. I forgot about this. As far as in Pixelmator Pro. Granted, I don't need to worry about that. I like the overall original photo I took. Like I said, they're minor adjustments. Grain. I don't want any grain. So see how we kind of removed a little bit of the noise? It's kind of what grain does, but I was looking for the noise on here. I know they have one. I'm sure they do. Oh, here we go. Light. So you know how we were playing in Lightroom, changing the exposures, right? We can do the same thing here. Highlights. There we go. So we're going to change the shadows. We can make her look a little darker. My little baby and her little tooth popping out there. I miss her so much. She was such a fun puppy. She was a good girl in the very end. She was such a sweet girl. She was my buddy. So we're gonna lighten the contrast a bit because, like I said, I want her to look like she still has her puppy fur because she was a puppy at this point. And I can make this darker. Oh, okay, it's a little backwards. So I see. Okay, so this one's a little reverse. To make it darker, you have to go right. And to lighten it, you go left. In this case, we're just going to keep it where it belongs because we don't really need to change that. Although, I feel like the shadows need to be a little lighter because I feel like that's just too dark. And the exposure, I think that's good right there. Alrighty. Now we could change the white balance. As I mentioned, temperature. We can make it cool or warm. Usually when you're in a black and white photo, at least on some programs, it's not going to make a difference. Same thing with the tint. So, it's just, you know, when you're doing it in Pixelmator Pro, it's really not going to be necessary. So we can actually turn this off. Alrighty. I'm still looking for the noise, but I think that's still under grain. Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Yep, it is. Let's see, this is, if I remember, desaturate. Nope. This one is lighten, sharpen, clone, spot heal, warp. We don't really want to warp her photo. But if you wanted to see what warp is, we can probably do that with another photo another day. It's actually pretty cool what warp does in here. It's almost like what liquify does in Photoshop. Liquify is really good for like editing people. But I don't do that kind of stuff. That's why I don't photograph people. People are a tough crowd. They really are. So I prefer nature. Nature is my thing. And that's why I prefer to do animals, landscapes, things of that nature. That's why you always notice why I have flowers and everything else. So we're going to color in that little dot. I should probably make my brush slightly bigger. There we go. Oh yeah. Okay, so with this one, it's a lot easier to fix the imperfections on her. All right, let's go over here. Get rid of that because that's like a big no. All right. And, you know, the spot heal is really like your best friend, especially if you are editing photos with people in them. and they have acne and they don't like it, or if somebody has issues with, freckles, which I think are beautiful. But some people want all of that stuff gone on their face in their photo. That's why I said people are a very tough crowd to take photos of. But this is why I prefer animals, because, you can clean up the stuff on their fur and they still look adorable. And, that's pretty much it. Although I was looking to get rid of the noise. I think the grain pretty much did that. But you can see how it just came out soft overall. But that's doing black and white photos. It's a fairly simple thing to do.